Chris Charla, thank you so much for your time out of the busy schedule, I imagine, at PAX Australia. I guess let's start at the beginning of ID at Xbox. This was a program that was developed, I think, alongside, or a lot of people were kind of made aware of it around the launch of it, or in the lead up to Xbox One launch.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously that came off the back of Xbox Live Arcade. What were some of the things that kind of led from Xbox Live Arcade to ID at Xbox?
Yeah, so Microsoft really pioneered independent development on console with Xbox Live Arcade, which was originally started, honestly, to help people ship little arcade games. And I was a developer at the time, didn't work for Microsoft, and that's exactly what we shipped, like Joust, Robotron, Defender, like these cool arcade emulations. But the second developers had access to this way to ship games that didn't require discs, didn't require a $60 price point or a high price point, they just took advantage of it. And all of a sudden there were all these really cool games, and then that kind of like really burst into the forefront. I would say in 2008 was that first summer of arcade where Braid and Castle Crashers shipped, and all of a sudden mainstream audiences knew about indie games, and the indie scene blew up, and it hasn't stopped growing since. And as we were kind of getting towards the launch of Xbox One, or before the launch of Xbox One, we knew that the indie scene was outpacing what we were able to do for them on 360. On Xbox 360, every game needed a publisher. It was kind of like it was a system that had been designed in the early 2000s, and it was just not like, current with what developers wanted. So we went out and did a big listening tour, talked to more than 50 developers, and what we ended up with was the ID at Xbox program. Right. And from our perspectives, from Microsoft's perspective, we knew we needed great independent games to succeed with Xbox One. We knew we needed to offer our players like really broad variety of games, and that meant having great indies. When we talked to independent developers about different things we could do, they were really clear. They were like, look, this scene has grown. We know what we want to do. Like, give us platform access and get out of the way. And we sat back and we're like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Like, that's exactly right, And so we kind of set this North Star that like the thing we wanted to do was make it easy for developers to ship on Xbox One. We knew if we did that, they'd have a great development experience. They'd bring their games, and we'd see the flowers of that work, in the store. Right. And that's exactly what's happened. We're now getting close to the 1,000th game shipping on Xbox One. Some just tremendous, amazing games are shipped. Games we never envisioned back in 2013 or 2014. And but our North Star hasn't changed at all. Like, we make it easy for developers to ship. We provide this great marketplace. We have an amazing fan base that loves games from independent developers and spends money and buys those games in the store. And it's turned into this really sustainable ecosystem.
Tanya Chi was talking about gaming for everyone at a panel here at PAX Australia, and how since I think the launch of Xbox One, the platform, I think, to a lot of consumers has seemed to kind of open up and develop in a really, really interesting way. I mean, like you said, in ways that you wouldn't have imagined from when Xbox One launched back in 2013. I guess, from your perspective, how has ID at Xbox evolved in that time?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Like, I think that what we've learned is the more open we are, the better. And whether that's something like enabling independent developers to self-publish on the platform, or something like enabling cross-play with Switch and PC, or enabling cross-progression so you can have your stuff in Fortnite and take it with you to wherever you want to play. Like, every time we do something like that, it pays off for us, it pays off for our players, and it pays off for our developers. And so I think when you look at Microsoft now and you look at Xbox now, it's a really different company than it used to be. And I think like everyone responds well to that. Developers certainly respond well to it, players respond well to it, and it's been great for everyone.
In hearing about ID at Xbox, I mean, when Xbox One was launching, like you said, the previous options were going with a Microsoft Studios, going with a third-party publisher, or going with ID at Xbox. But I imagine that would have been a pretty involved task of Microsoft to invest in the infrastructure to let indies basically just do it themselves, I guess. What were some of the bigger challenges in or the more interesting parts of getting
Yes.
Xbox ready for developers to take advantage of?
It was really fun, but like interesting might not be a word I'd use to describe it to the outside world. But it was really fascinating going from this world where we had this, just a few dozen publishers who everything went through them, to a world where now we have more than 3,000 independent developers who have dev kits in hand and access to all our back end. And there's no way we could have done it. We knew what we wanted to do as the ID team. We're passionate supporters of independent developers. There's no way we could have done it without the support of everyone else at Microsoft. So we would go into a meeting with a team that has some element of a back end system that was really designed for 100 partners, and we'd say, hey, we need this to scale to 1,000, and that's what the email invitation would say. And then we would get in there, and at first we were a little nervous. We didn't know what the reaction was going to be. People were working really hard to get Xbox One ready. It was a crazy time at Microsoft. And we would get in the room and they'd be like, "Oh, you're the indie guys. Like, what can we do? Like, how do we do this? Let's figure this out." And we had that experience over and over and over again. Myself and Angela Hession, who's a co-founder of the program, every time we walked into a meeting room, people just wanted to help. And so we would look at the way things were, look at the way we wanted things to be, and just basically we would say to developers, like, it's going to be easy, and it's going to be like this, and then if we had to do a bunch of scrambling and work on the back end to make it like that, that was fine. And then what we did really for the first year or two of the program was replace all our scrambling with automatic systems so that it really worked the way it was supposed to. And now when we talk to developers, I think they're by and large, they're pretty happy with how the program works and the back end and moving through the process. There's always work we can keep doing and constantly making improvements. But now we get to spend a lot of our time focusing on kind of the end of the journey, not the beginning, not just getting your game onto Xbox, but how do we get people to know about these games? How do we get these games to sell? How do we help developers know everything that's going on in the marketplace so they can make smart decisions?
Well, that's a really interesting point to make, because I feel like in games media we've heard a lot about the importance of curation, where we hear about marketplaces that might have a situation on their hands where it's difficult to shine a spotlight on games that really deserve it just because of the sheer number of games that are being released on that platform. How have you guys kind of worked to resolve that potential issue on Xbox?
Yeah, I mean, discoverability is a huge challenge in the digital age, and it's something, if you go talk to independent developers, it's probably the number one issue on their mind. So we've done a few different things. So one is, I think the Xbox Store actually does a really good job surfacing content that's meaningful to you every time you go, and your store experience and my store experience are going to be very slightly different based on kind of what you've played, what I've played, what you owned. Doesn't want to show you a game you already own. And so I think the first part is just making sure the store works and the store feels good, and I think we do a pretty good job there. The second piece is working with developers and letting them know, hey, when's the best time of year to release? What are the things you should be doing? What are the best practices today to really stand out and help your games? So
that'd be you reaching out to developers, letting them know, hey, this would probably benefit you.
Yeah, and just doing as much education as we can. We have the benefit as a platform holder of seeing, thousands of games released, not just the ID at Xbox games, but every game on the platform release, and knowing what the trends are, and what the trends were doesn't mean that's what's going to happen in the future, but for an independent developer who might be heads down for 2 or 3 years, the only thing we know for sure is that what worked 2 or 3 years ago probably doesn't work today. Yeah. So being able to share, what worked 6 months ago, what worked 3 months ago, what the best practices are today is really important. And in a way, we kind of use our resources as Microsoft to be the research staff for independent developers who probably don't have the budget to have, a 2 or 3 person, team just focused on what's going on in the marketplace.
So we're here at PAX Australia. There's obviously plenty of focus on some of the bigger titles that have come out on Xbox. Would you mind speaking a little bit to what people have seen on the floor that might have been involved with ID at Xbox specifically, and what the response has been?
Yeah, so we're showing a bunch of games in the Xbox booth that are from ID at Xbox developers. ASHEN is going to be shipping later this year, which we're super stoked about, from Aurora 44 over in New Zealand. We're showing Supermarket Shriek, which is a 2-player co-op supermarket cart steering game where you
involved.
you're in a shopping cart with a goat and you need to like drive it around. Some other games, and we're showing Tunic, which is a super cool game.
Yes.
And then there's some other games from ID developers that are just on the floor over in the indie area. There's Totem Teller, which is a really, really neat game that we showcased around the E3 timeframe, and a couple other games over there that'll be coming on to Xbox. So there's a lot of amazing content here at PAX Australia.
I mean, you mentioned Tunic there. I recall it might have been at this E3 or last E3. Tunic was actually part of the E3 press conference within Microsoft. What kind of work goes into the relationship and making sure they're aware of what they're getting themselves into, basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, like one of the really cool things, and I think if you ever had a question about how important independent games are to Xbox, just look at our E3 press conference. To us, that's the most important 90 minutes of the year in terms of sort of setting our agenda for the next year, and it's our biggest stage. And independent games have been a huge part of that ever since we launched Xbox One. I remember a couple of years ago we used to put all the games from ID and Xbox developers together to kind of contextualize them, which I think was cool. But the last couple of years, we haven't done that at all. Like the games have just stood on their own throughout the press conference. So you mentioned Tunic. Like last year, we showed a trailer of Tunic. We didn't put the Tunic trailer next to the other games that were from ID developers. Tunic just stood on its own because it's a super cool game. Yeah. And so, to me, that's really cool. It was great when we contextualized them. That was great to help sort of educate people. And now we don't need to anymore. Yeah. Like we just put cool games out there. One of the things that I think is really important to us in terms of how we run the program is that kind of E3 opportunity, or we have other opportunities around PAXs and GDC, is open to every developer in the program. So there's certain games that we see early on, like a Tunic or like a Cuphead, that we're like, okay, this is awesome. We have to tell the world about this game. And so, of course, they get an opportunity to be at, those kinds of shows, because we just want to show them to the broadest audience possible. But the other thing we do is before every show, we send an email to all 3,000 developers in the program, and we say, hey, E3 is coming up in however many months. If you're interested in participating, send us a video. And, we get a big group, this whole extended ID team, into a room, like 20 people in a room, watching, videos for 3-4 days of, all the people who, sort of submitting for E3. Yeah. And every year, like what everybody wants is to see a video and just be like, oh, that's the one. And every year it happens. Right. There's a game that, we had seen earlier and it seemed cool, but it wasn't exactly on our radar. And then we see this video and we're like, okay, this is something special. Let's get a build. And the next thing you know, they're on stage at E3. And unfortunately, we can't include everyone who wants to be on stage with us at E3 in the E3 briefing. It's only so long, but we do make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to have a chance to get in there.
So I guess looking forward to the future, where do you see the ID at Xbox program going, and where do you see independent development, I guess, going on the Xbox platform as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like when I look at where the ID at Xbox program is going, I want to say, hopefully it's not going anywhere. Like, our goal, which is to make it easy to ship on Xbox, is really not going to change. It hasn't changed, and I don't see it changing in the future. What is changing is the platform itself. There's always new platform initiatives, things like Xbox Game Preview, which is our early access program, or Xbox Game Pass, which is our membership program where folks can pay like a monthly fee and get access to 100 games to download at no extra cost. And so making sure that those opportunities are there for independent developers is something that we see as like a crucially important role. If there's changes in hardware, like the Xbox Adaptive Controller, or other changes in hardware, new hardware, we want to make sure our developers know about it as soon as they can, so they can take advantage of it. And so we'll continue to be that kind of like ambassador for developers inside Microsoft, and ambassador to developers from Xbox, to just make sure that we get great games on the platform and that people have great games to play.
Look forward to what comes out of ID at Xbox, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.